If you're on Dungeons & Dragons or Donald Glover TikTok right now, Fartbuckle needs no introduction. But for the rest of you, Fartbuckle is both the hero that we need as well as the hero we deserve. Let's discuss it. Insofar as I can tell, the large majority of us were introduced to Fartbuckle by this TikTok video to the theme of a new song by Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino, Lithonia, which means City of Stone, I believe.
Nobody gives. I feel liberated, over-medicated.
And whether they intended to or not, they answered one of the big questions that a lot of dungeon masters have when they're planning a D&D campaign. How minimal of a character introduction can we give and still have that character, when they pass, have a poignant ending? Because often the best way to motivate your team is to put some personal stakes in the game, to kill off somebody that's close to them. But sometimes at the very beginning of a campaign, you don't necessarily have that figure established. So you kind of figure out, like, what is the minimum that I can give to these players and still have them grab this and run with it. And since this TikTok is only like 10 to 15 seconds long, I think it really is an effective answer to the question. So first off, right, I think one of the things that makes Fartbuckle so effective is just familiarity. So many of us have been in a gaming group where this has happened, where we've had a character that was like a Fartbuckle. They joined the group, we might have misinterpreted them as a villain, they may have misinterpreted us as being after them, but eventually we got together as a party and we started hanging out with them from time to time, and they became a rapidly valuable part of our party until that moment when they roll a whiff, or the DM needs to kill somebody off so that we can be motivated to care about the plot a little bit more and take it a little bit more seriously, and then boom, our little Fartbuckle's dead. And this is kind of one of those things where almost every TTRPG gamer, if they've been in the game for like at least a year or two, they have their own Fartbuckle. Like, tell me about your Fartbuckle down below. I want to know about especially your first Fartbuckle. What Fartbuckle did you think of when you saw this video initially? And like, I think in short, what it all boils down to is this knowledge that he would sacrifice everything for his friends, because I think the large majority of us have at least one friend that we would do anything for, even if it meant sacrificing ourselves. And because we can all really quickly and really effectively put ourselves into that position, and because I think so much of our media pushes this mindset that, like, to save the day you will always need a single person to sacrifice themselves. And I want to stress, as a lot of people are talking about revolution, that may not necessarily be the best way to go about things in real life before anybody gets any ideas. But I think what's fascinating about Fartbuckle are these factors, right? Not only do they not have to be human, but they don't even need to necessarily be a species or a type of character that we are used to thinking good things about, right? Because goblins are very frequently things like raiders or assassins or things of that nature. They're not necessarily a sympathetic type of character. I've had some dungeon masters tell me the character needs to have an elaborate backstory, or at least a couple of really big key points in that backstory, but obviously this disproves that. And I think this is where it's a good point to talk about archetypes, right? Because as a creator, as a writer, a dungeon master, whoever you are, writing a character that is an archetype, there are a lot of us creative people that look down on using archetypes and things like that. But the one really fortunate thing about using an archetype, a character trope, things like that, is that you don't have to go through all of the work to build that elaborate backstory, to make your audience care about that character, because all you need to do is show a couple of brief things, a couple of brief factoids about that character. We don't need to know why the party has befriended this goblin. All we need to know is that they have befriended him to such a level that this goblin would sacrifice everything for him. We also learn that this character doesn't necessarily need to be like all serious all the time. Like, when you see the name Fartbuckle initially, it kind of gives you a giggle if you've not encountered it before. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so effective, because it very rapidly takes you from giggle to, oh my god, I'm sad. But I also think that when you have too much sentimentality packed into something, that makes it feel fake. The real world is not filled with perfect scenarios where nobody has a silly name or nothing silly happens. A lot of times, even in the worst, even in the darkest times, there are things that are humorous, even if they're like darkly humorous, darkly ironic. And I think that that's one of the things that's fascinating about Fartbuckle too, is it really embraces that idea that you can have things that are a little absurd, a little whimsical, and and you can have them side by side with things that are deeply emotional, because there are some people that would suggest that if something is going to be dark and moody and depressive, that it can't have jokes at all. I'm looking at you, that era of DC movies where it was like you could not have a joke. And I think it also kind of adds like a layer of imperfection to him. Again, this isn't like a perfect character that we see going to their death. This is a character that is imperfect, but is having at least one important perfect moment. And there are just so many different angles that we can look at this from, and so many different things that we can learn from this. And this is one of the things that I love about TikTok. Just because something is short doesn't necessarily mean that it was quickly thrown together or that it didn't take a lot of time to do. Often it takes much longer time to write a short script than it does to write a longer script, because you have to decide what moments to cut out to just leave the meat and potatoes that you need. And there are a lot of intellectual exercises, I think, that writers discuss about like what is the meat and potatoes. And like I said at the beginning, dungeon masters, especially with their audience that very often has ADHD, may not necessarily have the biggest attention span. A lot of times you need to make a character make a big impact in a hurry. And if you are somebody who is a creator and you're somebody who is looking to make emotional resonance, I think analyzing everything about Fartbuckle is a really good way to take those tactics and like incorporate them into your own writing. Fartbuckle is an important thought exercise for writers who want to understand better how to break down emotional resonance into its simplest form and wield that as a power. And I think it's one of those things, I always go back to Taylor Swift on this channel. It's because I make a lot of content about her. But I think that's one of those things that she's really good at too, is just breaking down emotional resonance into just 15 or so seconds. And I do think one of the aspects that helps with this is that it is multisensory, right? It is visual, it is audio. A lot of us were exposed to that song ahead of time, so we kind of know, we have that foreshadowing that like the next line is nobody gives a blamp. And you can kind of see how maybe this scenario isn't going to be as happy ending as the Fartbuckle name might have suggested. This isn't as whimsical as we thought. And obviously, Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, is just such a talented musician and songwriter, and he's just a great artist. And the way these two things come together is just marvelous. And I have to admit, one of the funniest takes that I've seen about this is obviously from younger people who are like, oh my god, this Childish Gambino guy, he's probably like, what's a Fartbuckle? Who are these D&D people and what are they doing to my art? But then, obviously, if you know anything about Donald Glover and the fact that he was on Community and the Community had 2 episodes about D&D, and that, you know, he's a pretty nerdy guy. He strikes me as the kind of guy to have an appreciation for Dungeons & Dragons. I don't know if he's ever discussed it in interviews. I feel like he has, though. He absolutely seems to have gotten in because he got in on it himself. He did his own little take to the trend.
Nobody gives a fuck. I feel liberated.
And obviously Donald Glover wasn't the only person who got in on this trend. A ton of other people in the D&D community and outside of the D&D community have participated in this. And that's just one of my favorite things about TikTok, is just how collaborative art works and how many people will take something and then they'll transform it and add a little bit of themselves, and it'll evolve over time into something bigger and bigger and bigger. And so you'll start out with like a single person doing a single song in their bedroom, and then by the end of it there's like an entire 100-person musical production that's 2 hours long. It is incredible the level of collaborative art that is possible on the platform. And I think that's one of the reasons that it frustrates me so much that so many people downplay it, especially people who are making longer, more serious content will like downplay it and act like it's not that serious. One of the things that has me really excited about the state of film and media nowadays is that many kids nowadays have a full-fledged video production studio in their phone or in their tablet or what have you. And they're also at the same time learning how to tell stories because a lot of them are playing Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. I think one of the things that I struggled with as a child is that I really struggled to convert the things that I was doing with school and the knowledge that I was getting in school into like actual unique creativity of my own. For me, when I started creating on my own, one of the first things that I started doing obsessively was making book reports, because it was really the only thing that I had been exposed to at that time. The type of book reports that I was writing for fun as a kid could now be like fully fledged video essays. I am excited to see where the future of like interactive audiovisual, multi-sensory entertainment that is generated by end users who are getting an education in storytelling and the value of oral storytelling and the importance of oral storytelling tradition. And because I think that it's so important, I think one of the most valuable ways that we learn as people is from the stories of other people like us. There's only so much value that a classroom education or a tutorial can get you. You have to eventually learn how to utilize those skills, and especially for me, that was a big challenge until I started actually reading other people's like autobiographies and things like that, and seeing how people like me had made the transition into doing bigger and better things. And back to Fartbuckle, like I just love that we're having these discussions about like, is short media actually valuable? Can it have emotional resonance? Should it be something that we take seriously as art? Because I think there are absolutely people that are genuinely making art on these platforms. It's just not necessarily the stuff that the For You page shoves down your gullet when you first log in at the beginning of the day. You know, you have to actually go looking for this stuff a lot of times. But this is a rare example of something more artistic actually getting a reach and going somewhat viral. At least I have a feeling that I'm going to make this video and people are going to be like, Fartbuckle? What's that? Because I asked a couple of my friends who are not on TikTok if they'd heard of it, and I don't know if this meme has fully escaped the TikTok bubble yet. So let me know down below if this is the first time you're hearing of Fartbuckle or what. And I also want to talk more about this concept of cultural shibboleths. Basically, cultural shibboleths are identifiers. They are subtle ways of people identifying other people who have been through similar experiences or who are from similar communities. It's like the Quentin Tarantino guy where one of the Germans realizes that the British guy isn't German because he counts down with his fingers the wrong way. For the younger folks of America, cultural shibboleths are things like memes. And I really love that memes are kind of evolving into this way that we can add additional context to scenarios. Like I was saying at the beginning, archetypes often allow you to preload information into your conversation. You can say that a character is a magical sailor senshi, and that conveys a lot of information to a certain audience, but if you've never watched an anime, that means nothing to them. Memes are kind of evolving into that communication style from the episode of TNG Darmok. If you know, you already know. I don't have to explain it, but here's the explanation for those of you who don't know. The Enterprise encounters this civilization that speaks entirely in metaphors, and because of that, it's very difficult for them to like just translate. It's not a word for word thing. I get very excited by the way younger generations are using memes and scenarios and movies and like TikToks and Vines and things like that as a kind of quick shorthand to explain to their friends and colleagues what is going on in their life. And there's a big part of me that thinks A, it's very exciting that Star Trek predicted all this, but B, I have no idea how historians of the future are ever going to understand the large majority of things that we've posted on the internet. Like, I know that if I'm not on TikTok for a couple of days, often my friends are talking about things that I don't understand and using words that I don't understand. Well, like a good example was the ballerina farm thing and the egg apron. Like, a lot of people started talking about their egg apron moment with their ex-husband, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I had been offline for a couple days to finish editing my JoJo Siwa video. And I'm very excited because anything that allows communication to be more efficient and more effective, especially among a group that has a lot of similarities, it makes it a lot easier for people to communicate. Nowadays, there are all too often a lot of really negative, really sad, really depressing, really real things going on in the internet, and honestly it was kind of relieving to cry about something that was fake for once, and it was good catharsis because I was too stunned about a lot of the other things that were going on in the world to like cry about those things, and I had a lot of emotion that I needed to get out of me. And I think that might have been one of the reasons that so many people had such a strong reaction to. I think this definitely hit at a period of time where a lot of us were in need of catharsis, but weren't necessarily ready to cry about the real world yet. It's been fascinating to see people get together and discuss this and make their own takes on it and talk about their own version of Fartbuckles and discuss like storytelling elements and like what is the minimum information that you need to give a character for your audience to care about them when they finally pass. And it's so nice and so interesting and so refreshing to have these discussions, and stuff like this is just a great reminder that like we're not down for the count. Like, yes, there are a lot of things going on in the world that are not the greatest, and the world is kind of a scary place right now, but in the real world and in the fake world, there are always going to be Fartbuckles. And I do think that this may be one of the reasons that the story resounded so much, right? Because so many people want to think about scenarios where it almost seems like hope is lost. It almost seems like the party is going to be wiped out, but at the last minute, we have salvation at the hands of Fartbuckle. I can only hope that there's going to be a lot of Fartbuckles in real life in the coming of years. Maybe not giving the ultimate sacrifice, but definitely caring about their friends. Caring and compassion and valuing one another is one of the only things that is going to get us through the next couple of years, and really any exercise that makes human beings feel and exercises their compassion muscles, that's really good for what we're going to need going forward. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that Fartbuckle, in my mind, is so valuable and so important. It is going to be like one of the big trends of 2024, I think. Let me know what you think about Fartbuckle down below. If you like this video, I'm still a small YouTuber. I have under 2,000 subscribers as I am saying this. So if you do, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. Let me know about your Fartbuckles down below, and have a wonderful day.